down. We the talk around town. Alex threw the ball to Smokey for a touchdown. It's fourth down and you don't really want no more. We've been winning from the door. You should check the scoreboard. Check the scoreboard.
Welcome back to another episode of the Scoreboard. 2 more weeks to go in the NFL season. It is Championship Sunday. Well, it's not Sunday yet, but it's the week before Championship Sunday. So this is where destiny is made. We have 4 teams, and they're trying to win a championship. Only 2 of them will be able to do it. 2 good matchups, 2 or 4, I would say, deserving teams, more or less, given what we saw last week. But Smokey, how are you doing?
Oh, I am good. I'm better than Bills fans right now because it looks like the Bills are never going to get over the hump. I don't know if this is just destiny right here. It's almost like we were talking about last week how the Patriots are like, or the Chiefs are like the Patriots now. And the Bills almost feel like maybe a combination of the Colts and the Broncos of that era, which they eventually, Peyton Manning eventually got over the hump there. Maybe the Bills will get over it one day, but it seems to end the same way every single year. They have a team that is good enough to be in a Super Bowl, yet they're never going to get to a Super Bowl, apparently, because they happen to be in the same era as the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, and unfortunately that's bad news for Josh Allen right now. But here's a question or something I want you to tell me. Convince me somehow that the NFL is not scripted, because I've not wanted to believe this for so long. I wasn't hearing it for a while, and then things started falling into place, and you get questionable penalties and missed kicks and whatnot. But now we're getting the exact thing, and I do believe both of those teams, the 49ers and the Ravens, are going to be in the Super Bowl right now. There's no way you can convince me that those 2 teams, I'm giving away what we're going to talk about a little later, but there's no way you can convince me that those 2 teams are not going to be in the Super Bowl right now. So, convince me that this game is not rigged.
Okay. Convince you that the game isn't rigged. My best point is probably that the only way I could argue this is probably from the NFC side of things. The Niners-Packers game was too close for comfort if you wanted to comfortably rig it, because after everything that's happened and with the weather being what it was, you can't rely on the Niners making a game-winning drive and game-winning stop within 4 minutes to clutch it out. They probably had a 20% chance to win that game at some point during the fourth quarter. And you could have, if you wanted to rig it, you could have done a better job of rigging it in their favor to make it less of a nervous wreck. That's my best argument. Mm-hmm. Best thing I can say. But I do also see that on the Niners side of things, actually the refereeing was pretty bad, but that kind of went both sides. I know the Packers got some questionable calls in terms of the spotting of the ball, but then Jordan Love threw 2 interceptions. So at the end of the day, like it's hard to really say that, because the Packers overall played like the better team for the majority of the game, and the majority of the unbiased audience certainly deserved to win. Mm-hmm. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that in large part because the Niners played down to the competition so much. I never like to see a team doing that. Convince you that the game is rigged. I don't know. I have nothing, because right now, there's like the purple team and the red team are the 1 seeds. They're playing at home to win championships right now. Yeah. The Super Bowl logo obviously is red and purple. It would be the 3rd year in a row where these Super Bowl colors, which are exactly 2 colors every time, by the way, represent exactly the 2 teams playing in the Super Bowl. It will be a 3rd year in a row.
Yeah. I think it's going to happen. At some point,
it's a good chance, really.
I still want to believe that it's not rigged, right? I do believe that the NFL pushes certain players. They did it for Tom Brady. They changed the rules to fit certain players. And now that Patrick Mahomes is the golden boy of the NFL, he's the new Tom Brady, more athletic even than Tom Brady. But now that he's the face of the NFL, I do believe that refs are going to give certain calls to the Chiefs every time, but it almost feels like they're getting to, the quarterbacks, interceptions happen. They're getting to the kickers because missed field goals was the deciding factor in 3 of these games last week, I believe. And especially, your game there with the 49ers and the Packers. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it would be easy, to get to a kicker and just say, hey, we need this team to win. And that's how it plays out. I don't know. It feels weird. It just seems like if that narrative came up at the beginning of the season and it actually still plays out like that with the entire audience knowing that it's going to happen this way. Maybe there's casuals that don't know, that they've never heard that theory. But all hardcore fans know this theory by this point, right? Like, it seems like everybody knows it.
There's also this... Yeah, keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say, it feels weird that they would let it just play out that way when everybody, and especially in a season where the entire audience is calling it scripted now. Or maybe not the entire audience, but, a vast a group of people out there or have this fun little theory, whether they believe it or not, that the NFL is scripted, and they make jokes about it. Ever since somewhere in the middle of last season, they've made jokes about the NFL script. And then this happens, and here it's playing out exactly to a T how the theory goes. It's hard to not at some point go, yeah, maybe it is scripted.
See, okay, I'll revamp the history of it real quick. We only have 2 games, so there's some time to talk about other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. The reason this became a thing was because former all-pro, all-great running back Arian Foster went onto a talk show and delivered one of the best comedy bits we've seen a former player ever do in any kind of TV, where he in detail described about how the NFL is scripted, how the script was handed out to teams and players before the season, how every game would end. They knew everything, right? And it was a joke. It was a joke. Fundamentally, it was a comedy bit, but there's a lot of people that took it seriously. And ever since then, everything that happens has been looked at a lot more critically, which in itself is not a bad thing. And of course, to a large majority of the people, the NFL is scripted theory still is a joke, at least to the extreme interpretation that we are kind of talking about, that is a joke. But I will say this, I don't believe that in week 6 the NFL knows and can determine exactly the 2 teams that will win championships and meet in the Super Bowl. I don't believe that. So that to me is a coincidence thus far, even if it happens, even if it's the Niners and Ravens. Because by the time the Super Bowl logo came out, the Niners and Ravens looked like 1 seeds already. They looked like favorites to be in the Super Bowl to begin with. So I don't think the NFL... I don't think it goes that far. But what is undeniable is that there are players and teams and agendas that the league and surrounding media like to push. That is completely undeniable, both in the positive and the negative sense. And one of those is Lamar Jackson and is the Ravens with his whole contract thing from last year. Mm-hmm. It's all set up as this is their Lamar Jackson revenge year, and this is the year he proves them wrong. The narrative supports it, and that would mean that probably in a situation where there's room for doubt or room for error, decisions would be made in favor of that narrative. That's where it kind of overlaps, right? The NFL is not WWE, where everything that happens has been written down on a script, but there's influences there, because the NFL fundamentally is an entertainment product, right? That's where the most of the money comes from, is from TV and from people being entertained by it and from it telling stories. The same thing can be said for the way that games are refereed when it comes to penalties and protection of certain players. Patrick Mahomes, an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady will get more roughing calls than, let's say, a Daniel Jones or an Anthony Richardson. Mm-hmm. They just will, because they are worth more money, and they're not only do they earn more money, but they're worth more TV money. They're big names. It is a very open secret that some animals are more equal than others when it comes to how quarterbacks are protected in the league. I think no one would possibly deny that. And as for whole games being decided by penalties, I would be willing to go as far as to say that definitely plays a role. I don't believe that there's anyone going to like, let's say this Bills-Chiefs game, right? I don't think there's anyone walking up to the referees pregame from the NFL, like, you know, shady guy with the glasses and the black hat, and it's like, here's a briefcase with 50 grand in it. The Chiefs are winning tonight. Wink, wink. Right? I don't think that happens, but I think that it's possible, and it's with certain teams. You know, it's late in the fourth quarter. The sort of questionable pass interference or judgment call, it will go in favor of the designated team more often than not. I don't think it's in an organized criminal fashion, but I think it's more like all the influences that come in from the surrounding media. Mm-hmm. And also from the vested interests of the NFL itself that sort of want this narrative to be pushed. You know, the NFL has made no qualms about promoting certain teams on their page during the year, and one of those teams is the Chiefs, and one of those teams is the Niners, and the Ravens as well. So all of those things definitely play into it. Yeah. I'm not going with the full-on conspiracy. Like, preseason, we know these teams are winning championships this year, but when the situation opens up for a doubtful call, I think it'll happen. Eagles, Bills, for example, was a good example this regular season.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And there are some people out there, though, that believe that every single play is scripted at this point, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's no way. There's no way. That would be such a mass conspiracy that it would be next to impossible to pull it off, to have everyone on the exact same script for every single play. But yes, I absolutely agree with it.
I would be willing to put my hand in the fire that teams are not involved. Individual players are not involved in scripting or fixing any kind of game. The absolute most I would be willing to acknowledge is that the NFL nudges its referees ever so slightly into the direction of favoring certain players and teams for the brand image of the league. If some random team, let's say like the Jaguars, were to from start to finish blow out the Chiefs or the Eagles in a game, they're not turning that around somehow. Even if it would be in their interest for them for the game to go differently. But in those situations where it's close, it definitely happens. It definitely happens here and there. Mm-hmm. And there is a possibility. We saw that with people say with the Niners and Packers. I don't see necessarily why the NFL has much more of an agenda to push the Niners than they do the Packers. But in things like the Chiefs and Eagles last year, you know, the Kelsey Bowl. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course the Eagles were no contest in the whole playoffs. They played scrub after scrub, and then Brock Purdy got hurt in the first quarter. So that's no question. But sometimes those things certainly seem to happen to some degree or other.
Well, I do think every now and then someone could, whether it's even a betting shark or something like that, you know, a gambling shark or something. Sharp. Did I say shark? But anyway, you know, you could get to a player. I mean, it's definitely happened in the past. There's a historical reference for that. The players have thrown games before, for sure. So I wouldn't say that's impossible either, that there could be a player involved in a conspiracy from time to time, for sure.
Yeah. You know, the NFL is doing a lot about this whole players being allowed to participate in betting and any kind of sports betting, and it's actually taking complete overhand. It's dystopian at this point how much the betting and gambling world has taken over and is dictating pro sports, and the corresponding legislation the NFL has to issue is completely confusing as well for the players. So they're obviously trying to avoid that as much as possible to keep legitimacy. But this, I guarantee you the policies are not that strict internally. Yeah, you know, they will fine any player of any team for being like within 200 feet of like some bookie office during the season, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't happen to the referees. I mean, if there's a game deciding bunch of penalties, the NFL's protecting those referees because they're their employees, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing their work. So that's the way it goes. Yeah. Every play being scripted, though, that's That's not realistic. That's not possible. I mean, you know a little bit about professional wrestling, and like even in just a normal WWE, like a pro wrestling fight, it usually involves two people. Just about the most things that are scripted are the outcome of the match and like some of the signature moments, right? Okay, we need you to jump off of this cage, right? That's a big one. Or we need the fight to go about 10 minutes. But there's a lot of improvisation even then, because you just can't script every bounce and every single fall and every like where everyone walks, right? It's not possible.
Absolutely.
It's too restrictive. NFL even less so, because it involves so many more people.
And surprisingly, there have been very few wrestling matches that were completely scripted front to back, and that involves actually practicing that match over and over and over again to you get it perfect, which that's impossible to do for a football game also. And you never know, this is an oblong ball, you never know where that thing's going to bounce on a kick or whatever.
And you don't need it either, because like it's easy to make Patrick Mahomes win the MVP almost every year because he already is a top 3 quarterback, and like half the time he deserves to win it damn near in his career. And if I just ever so slightly nudge the calls in favor of him or the Chiefs in critical moments, that wins them another 2 or 3 games. That takes off another 2 or 3 interceptions of his season. And that's usually enough because he is already such an elite player. I'm using the Mahomes and Chiefs example like purely as an example, right? That's certainly the NFL likes the Chiefs, but that's not the only team that where that's the case that has gotten their share of favorable calls, especially not throughout history. So I'm using that just as an example, but it's not that hard for the NFL to have some impact on how they would like things to go. Doesn't always go perfect, but
yeah, and then they can just improvise from that point on when it doesn't go perfect, you know, like the Chiefs lose 6 games in the season and they're like, well, we're gonna have to make sure
but the division sucks really bad, so they make the playoffs anyway.
yeah, absolutely. Well, the Bills lost 6 games too. I really feel bad for the Bills though, because it feels like they're never going to get over this hump, you know. Everybody knows the story of the 90s and Kelly and going to 4 straight Super Bowls and never winning one. The Bills are still yet to win a Super Bowl. Reminds me of the Falcons, but
they're yet to go to one since that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was the best they've ever. That was the best they've been for a long time. Yeah. You would expect the Allen, and McDermott era to produce similarly to that, but they have not. They have not won They haven't won nothing.
Yeah, they haven't won a championship. No, yeah, I mean, nothing. Obviously, if they've never been to a Super Bowl, they haven't won a championship. Man, and it's been rare that they even made the championship game.
That's right. Happened once, right? One time.
I believe it was only once, yeah. Wasn't that against the Chiefs also?
Yeah, it was against the Chiefs, yeah.
So, let's say nothing is scripted. Maybe the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes just have a psychological advantage. You know, that's the excuse I always make for Alabama beating Georgia, even when Georgia is clearly the better team. You know, it's a psychological advantage. Saban is always going to win over his protege, Kirby. He has the psychological advantage, but at least Saban is retired now, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Good days on the horizon for that.
What do you mean good things? I want Dan Lanning. I need Dan Lanning. Man, I love that guy during the regular season. He took Oregon to new heights. He is the coach I want for the future for Alabama. Well, 100%.
Maybe after his Nike deal runs out. I think that was the biggest factor in him staying in Oregon there, was that he's got a huge contract to be out there in Oregon. And he has this huge Nike deal, and he's making so much money. I know Alabama's a rich school. Like, they got a lot of money, but I don't know that they could have beat the contract, to tell you the truth. I mean, Dan Lanning has it good. Also, he doesn't have to play in the SEC. So
that is true.
Probably thought, and Kalen DeBoer, the coach that beat him last year, that kept him out of the playoffs, that kept him from winning the championship, moved to the SEC to take over the Alabama job. So, he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. So he's probably doing pretty well staying out there in Oregon for now.
Though his star quarterback is going into the draft.
That's true. He's going to have to get another one of those. I don't know that I'd have to look at their roster. I don't know if they're bringing up a younger guy or if they got someone out of the portal. Maybe they did, but they're
in good position. They're in good position to win.
Yeah,
Pac-12 next year.
They should be really good in their new division next year. Either way,
Yeah,
but maybe Dan Lanning will come over later down the line somewhere.
I'd love that. Love to see that. And that's the energy I would like to see in a coach. But we're talking about the NFL.
Yeah.
And this week, we have 2 championships. Next week, by the way, since there's no games, we are going to do NFL honors, reviewing our maybe preseason picks and predicting all of the awards that are going to be revealed during Pro Bowl weekend, which I've taken a sneak peek at some of the odds, and there are some flooring odds. I mean, perplexing stuff.
Wow.
For 1 or 2 of the awards. Like, you would not trust your eyes. I'm not going to reveal anything, but I'm just give you like an idea of just think about who defensive player of the year should be, who's probably betting favorite. If you can't think about it, maybe look up the stats
Michael Parsons,
of some of defensive.
I would think.
Look up stats of some defensive players this year, and just try to make betting odds just based on what you've seen and what the stats look like. And next week we'll we'll see some just out of this world stuff, probably, unless it really changes until then.
I'm intrigued now because I haven't looked at them. I haven't looked at any odds yet, so.
Yeah, I would say if you want the full experience, look at the stats. Really, look at the stats. Pick out some of the candidate players, see what they've done, and kind of think of what makes sense, like what the odds should be roughly, right? Because you've been pretty good at guessing odds this year. You're in for a surprise unless something changes radically.
Right.
Speaking of which odds, by the way, I know this is not the most exciting game this week anymore, but we do it every week. So, who has the bigger spread in the championship games here? Who's the biggest spread, NFC or AFC?
That's tough, actually, because the 49ers, like you were saying, they were losing that game against the Packers until they pulled it out at the end there, and they got outplayed by the Packers. And the Lions, basically handled business and went out and beat the Bucs. Beat them for pretty much the entire game. I know they were tied at halftime, like 10-10 or whatever, but they had an advantage over the Bucs. They clearly beat them. They were clearly the better team. The Lions look really good, but then again, on the other side, the Ravens and the Chiefs are the team of the NFL. It's Patrick Mahomes. You can never count Patrick Mahomes out. When we pick the Bills, the Chiefs are going to win. So I guess that's got to be it, though, right? Because the Ravens are just on fire. They look unbeatable. They look like they're going to be Super Bowl champions this year. It's going to be the Harbaugh. I'm sorry, we're off of conspiracies now, but still, there's going to be 2 Harbaughs winning championships this year.
I see.
I'm going to go with the Ravens and Chiefs.
Well, it's the Niners.
Really?
By a good bit, by the way. And I'll say this. I believe these should be flipped.
Yeah.
Ravens, 3.5 point favorites at home.
Wow.
Meaning that neutral field, this is basically a coin toss, which I don't see at all. Niners, 7 point favorites, full touchdown and an extra point.
Wow.
Against Detroit.
Wow.
So those, to me, they should be flipped. What we've seen from the Ravens and Chiefs, last week, the Chiefs barely slipping by. To be fair, in a hostile environment, so that's a high value win. Ravens ran over Houston, completely destroyed them. And what we've seen from the Niners last week, which was, the Niners, unlike the Lions, are not a cat team, but if they were, they'd have lost 8 out of their 9 lives in that game against the Packers. It's hard to say that you have a 1 seed playing with house money, but that's what it feels like now, because that was not a game they were supposed to win, or they should have really deserved to win for the majority of the game. And at the end, higher class came through, the higher experience, the slightly better roster came through when it was who can make the game-winning drive. Purdy did it, and not Jordan Love. When it came to who can make the game-sealing stop, the Niners defense did it, and not the Packers defense. That was ultimately the difference in the game, and that was just a difference in class between the teams. But for it to get to that point, a lot of things can happen. Niners were not convincing. The play calling was awful. The players overcame the play calling. By the way, I don't know if you've been watching these Niner games, but do you remember the 49ers being the number 1 pass rush in the league for many years? Now, what happens when you take the number 1 pass rush in the league and you add Javon Hargrave, Chase Young, and Cleveland Ferrell, all first-round picks to that unit.
They should get even better. They should remain on top.
Not a sack. Barely a pressure.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening, but you got Nick Bosa, Chase Young, Eric Armstead was back to Hargrave. The defensive line of the Niners has 6 first-round picks on it. 6. The entire 49ers offense has one first-round pick, Brandon Ayuk. Only one. Not a sack. Nothing. The weakest unit on the 49ers since Christmas Eve has been the defensive line. And I have no explanation for it. And I have nowhere to even start with it. This team's winning somehow, but it really feels like Steve Wilkes has to go as a defensive coordinator for how passive and weak they've become. Just that's not the same identity of the same defense we had the last few years.
Well, I was seeing that Steve Wilkes is up for some coaching interviews, so you may lose him anyway.
For a head coach? Please take him.
Not in Atlanta, no. I'm good. I saw that run.
Anywhere.
I saw that run with the Cardinals. No, don't want him as a head coach. He was in Carolina for a little while too, right?
It's been a real disappointment. It's been a real disappointment. Now that they need them the most, their strongest unit by draft picks by far, more first round picks than the entire rest of the roster combined. The defensive line can't show up. Nothing there. And if this ends up going, the Lions are a top 3 offensive line, by the way.
Yes.
And the Ravens are the number 1 offensive line. And we saw what happened to the Niners D-line on Christmas Eve at Baltimore. I mean, they looked like high school kids against that Baltimore offensive line. And you are not winning a game like that. So I'm very concerned about this one, actually. So the 7 points, I don't know. I don't like the 7 points. They should be favored. I'd give them 3, maybe 4 points. I'd give Baltimore probably 6.
Yeah.
If I were to set the odds.
I would give the 49ers 3 just for home field because I feel like these two teams are pretty evenly matched. We've seen the Lions actually drop games here and there just like the 49ers. I mean, they ended up with an identical record for a reason. And it was almost like Jekyll and Hyde, you know. The 49ers had really good games where they blew out teams like the Cowboys, and then they had really bad games where they got blown out by like the Ravens, you know. And same thing happened to the Lions. But yeah, I mean the Lions is no slouch on defensive line either. I mean, they can get to the quarterback, so I can see where you would be worried.
Aiden Hutchinson's insane.
Absolutely.
He's so good. Guy is so good. He's crazy good. How about we start at this game, actually? How about we start with the Lions-Niners, already talking about it, the NFC. Before that, though, I want to ask this. We need an update on our predictions.
Oh, yeah. Well,
for this postseason.
As we talked about last week, we only disagreed on one game. That happened to be the Chiefs and the Bills, and I picked the Bills, so I lost that. So all the other games we got correct, so you actually went perfect for the first week of the playoffs, or divisional round of the playoffs. That actually brings us back to tied for the entire season, and that means I'm still 1 ahead of you in the playoffs, but we are tied on the entire season at 169 each.
I have to disagree with you on one more game, or we have to have one more disagreement in order for there to be a winner.
We should do that in the Super Bowl. I mean, that would be.
We should do it in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
we should do it in the Super Bowl.
That would play out perfect. So, if you're gonna pick the same guys as me, then just do that because it would be more epic and fitting to just disagree on the Super Bowl.
That's true. Yeah. I want to see who you're picking this week, though. That's. I want to see who you're picking first because we might just have a natural, organic disagreement this week.
Well, maybe so. You almost talked me out of picking the 49ers. Like, I don't know. I feel like even though that was a bad game, maybe weather played a big part of that. Yes, you got outplayed. The 49ers got outplayed by the Packers. And the Lions looked really good. And all that stuff you just told me makes me want to change my pick to the Lions. But I can't go against the script. Like, right now, I can only believe that it's going to be the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So I am going to stick with the 49ers at home. I would like to see the Lions. I'll tell you this. The Lions are a fun team to watch, and they are a team that the entire world can root on just because of their past. and it's really fun to see them win games. And they have the team to do it. They have the coach to do it. I did see a press clipping of a coach out there. They were still making fun of the biting kneecaps or whatever. And he's like, well, who's on top now? Not verbatim, but, he's like, yeah, it was probably you, the guy asking the question. Probably you are one of the ones that said that, right? So they made fun of him, but here we are. He's going to the NFC Championship. I'm still going to stick with the 49ers. Going with the 49ers at home.
Where do I begin with this? I guess I'll take away the pick first, and then I'll do all my explanation. I'm also taking the Niners at home. Now, I'll say this.
Okay.
What we saw from the Niners in this divisional game against a very good Packers team, I don't want to take away from the Packers. They've exceeded every expectation, above and beyond. It was a very scary showing for a 1 seed. This rest versus rust debate is more of a joke than anything else, but the Niners looked rusty when they came out. They did. What the Ravens did not. They had the same amount of rest, and the Ravens ran over their 4th seed competition. The Niners looked rusty. They had every right to lose that game at home and just go home against Green Bay. They did not. The biggest takeaway from this game for me, and there's a lot of gripes I have with the national sports media as this, but the biggest takeaway, Brock Purdy is the guy. The guy. That's the quarterback. Because Brock Purdy did what everyone said he couldn't do, what the Niners couldn't do, which is come back from behind. He's a system quarterback. He can only play with the lead. He can't play under pressure, yada, yada, yada. With a terrible offensive play calling job by Kyle Shanahan, a terrible defensive play calling job by Steve Wilkes, drops galore by an all-pro tight end and all-pro receiver Brandon Ayuk, all kinds of mistakes. People were slipping all over the place. I mean, the Green Bay receivers were wide open all over the field in the first half because Niners DBs could not get footing. In a rain-soaked environment where he, for 50 minutes, cannot get a grip on the ball. Every timing's off because people just can't run their routes right because they're slipping. Brock Purdy came through with 4 minutes on the clock, needs a touchdown exactly, not a field goal. Went down the field, biggest drive of his life, overcame a drop by George Kittle, went 6 for 7, picked up 9 yards with his feet, scored the game-winning touchdown on a game-winning drive. It was a terrible game overall by the entire team, few exceptions. I had a second-year Mr. Irrelevant quarterback just bail out my whole team. And that is something that can't be said about a whole lot of quarterbacks. Rodgers does that all the time. Mahomes does that all the time. A lot of quarterbacks. Peyton and Brady did not have to do that all that much. They just did not have to do it all that much. Purdy doesn't have to do it all that much, but to know that he can do it is the biggest win and the biggest takeaway going into the long-term future for this team. So that is huge. And still knowing that he doesn't have to do it all that much because I don't want him to have to. That is the most encouraging thing I can take away from what was a terrible game that I would like to forget as soon as possible. And the best way to forget it is by winning a championship this weekend. Now, I'm aware that everyone will be rooting against me, everyone who's not a Niners fan, because Detroit is obviously the Cinderella story in more ways than one. You know how they always make these maps, these bandwagon maps where they show the entire country and then they show every state and which team is their favorite in the playoffs? Mm-hmm. I looked at one today and I think 46 states are rooting for the Lions. 46 out of 50. Aside from, I think, California, Maryland, I think Missouri and Oklahoma, every single state is on the Lions bandwagon. And the Niners do play at home, so that is an advantage. Everyone be rooting against them. The media seems like they're rooting against them. They don't like Brock Purdy anyway. I think they're getting it done. Just being the better team, the classier team. Hopefully the rust is off. Hopefully Deebo Samuel, fingers crossed, is able to play. There's a lot on the line. If the Niners win this week, they will tie the Cowboys for most NFC titles in history. They will take the lead in most playoff wins in history. So this is a huge, huge game. I'm taking the Niners to win the championship once again. And I'm going to agree with you on that one. But, man, it's scary. It's scary because the Lions team is no joke. They are no joke. What do we think about the AFC here? Chiefs and Ravens. I'll let you make your statement first. Moving to the AFC side of the bracket. Probably one of the most anticipated matchups. We have the Chiefs at Baltimore. What are your initial thoughts about this one?
Well, my initial thoughts is that this is Patrick Mahomes. So you want to lead toward Chiefs in games like this. I mean, at least that's been the norm for the past 5-6 seasons because it's Patrick Mahomes. And we've grown accustomed to seeing Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So you want to think this is his shot. He's going to do it again. But the Ravens have just been so unstoppable. And I think a lot of the football world have been getting Chiefs fatigue. You know, we talked about this a little last week also with the way the Chiefs act and their similarities to the Patriots of the past. I don't know, man. It's so tough. I'm still going to stick with my theory that the theory that is passing around, the conspiracy theory. Yeah, that is still true. And I believe this is going to be the Ravens. I think they're going to do it through the run game, through Lamar running. And a lot of their stars are out. But I did hear that Mark Andrews is coming back, and that's going to help a lot. I do worry when you talk about conspiracies in the NFL that Taylor Swift plays a part in this somehow. And if any way possible, the NFL wants Taylor Swift to be at that Super Bowl, because that's just even more ratings for casual fans and even fans, you know, certain people who are into the pop music and whatever that don't even watch football. They're going to watch just to see Taylor Swift on there. So that's going to boost the ratings for the Super Bowl either way. But do they really need it? I don't know, because, you know, it's always the most popular show in the world each year. Everybody watches the Super Bowl, right? Even if they just watch it for the commercials. So I'm kind of torn on the conspiracy thing, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go with the Ravens to take this one at home and move on to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the conspiracy could go either way, right? You could make a case for Baltimore with the colors and the this TV news station that like 2 weeks ago announced that the Niners and Ravens would be in the Super Bowl by accident. So you could go that way, but then of course you can go to Chiefs way, which is just seems to be like the new poster franchise of the NFL. I'd like to have them in as many games as possible. And then there's this theory of like an Eminem and Taylor Swift Super Bowl as well, which is possible if both the Lions and Chiefs win, but that would destroy the color conspiracy. That's a big one. So you're picking the Ravens. Man. Okay, I'm gonna do this because we said it. Okay, we said it would be fun if we disagreed in the Super Bowl eventually. I'm gonna do you one better. I will disagree with you on this one. Because here's one thing, maybe this also just adds to the conspiracy flames or whatever, but the NFL has determined the officiating crew for this particular game, Chiefs at Ravens, to be the one referee crew with the highest road team win percentage in the league. I don't know if that means anything, but with this referee crew, road teams win almost 50% of the time, more than with any other referee crew in the league by quite a good bit. If you want to be conspiratorial in favor of the Chiefs, you can go with that. I think the NFL has an agenda to push both of those teams to a degree. There's plenty of reason to believe that the NFL likes both of those teams and wants them to win for different reasons. I will pick the Chiefs because I believe that the Chiefs defense has what it takes to stop what the Ravens do best, which is sort of improvise on offense. Behind a very strong offensive line. It's still a mismatch in the sense that I don't think any defensive line in the league really matches up well against the Ravens. But I think that the Ravens have linebackers and safeties, and especially corners, that sort of have the athletic skill set to limit Lamar Jackson to sort of the 4 or 5 yard runs instead of the 10, 12, 15 yard runs, which is how the Ravens win games. I think they'll be able to limit Lamar on the ground. He's not going to break the game on the ground, but because he's so good at scrambling and running it himself, he will keep drives alive. He's going to make the game close, but ultimately, I think the more it comes down to a passing competition between Mahomes and Lamar, the bigger the favor goes to the Chiefs. And I'm going Kansas City. I'm going probably expecting sort of a high-scoring game, something in the realm of like 34-31. Kansas City gets it done on the road. They've shown they can do it. That was a big question mark going into last week. They had not played a playoff game on the road, ever. Before last week. It was the first time they played in Buffalo, hostile environment, as hostile as it gets, snowballs and everything. They can win on the road, so I'm taking the Chiefs to go win on the road, in part because I prophesize that we will see the Niners-Chiefs Super Bowl matchup multiple times over the next decade or so, and I want that to be true because that would be really amazing. In part also because as a homer, sort of the Chiefs are a better matchup for the Niners than the Ravens, but mostly I'm doing it to disagree with you, so that going into the Super Bowl weekend we definitely have a difference, and it would be it's going to be necessary for us to disagree next week, because we could just agree on everything and take the tie and whatever, but this way it'll be necessary for us to disagree next week, and it forces both of us to like make our own unique arguments, and I think that's the most interesting part when we just have a single game, game to pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at this, though, and I was thinking about this while you were talking, there is multiple storylines that could play out for the Super Bowl here. You mentioned the Taylor Swift and Eminem thing. Yeah, that's really good for ratings.
Anything's a good storyline. Anything. Any matchup is a good one.
Yeah, it really is. Because you have the underdogs. Well, I guess the Ravens aren't technically underdogs here, but the Lions are absolutely underdogs, and that's becoming America's team, as you were talking about with the map of the bandwagon fans there. But you could also see the Chiefs versus 49ers rematch. You could see the Lions versus Ravens. I'm trying to think of a good one for the Lions versus Ravens. I know there's a good storyline somewhere in there. Maybe it's the quarterback that nobody wanted, and the Lions took him in, and they got the new coach, and now they're going up against the quarterback that, well, I was going to say the quarterback that everybody wanted, but if you remember last offseason, didn't seem like a lot of people wanted Lamar Jackson, though.
Not for the price, no.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's...
he's never done anything.
Well, if he goes to the Super Bowl, that's a good storyline for the NFL also.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. That's a big one. The Lamar Jackson revenge tour has been a big thing in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
Here's why I don't think that if we broadly categorize teams by, and this is, I'm using wrestling terminology, into heel and face teams, right?
Yeah.
Just to explain this really quickly, the wrestling terminology. A face character is someone who the audience is supposed to like, right? They're sympathetic, they're good-natured, like they generally have pure intentions, and they don't cheat in matches, right? And a heel character is the opposite of that. It's supposed to be like the antagonist that everyone boos, everyone hates, and they can antagonize the crowd, and they often cheat and use like devious tactics to win, right? Or they even just like basically just come on a stage and they curse out the crowd and cuss out their opponents, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So if we broadly look at that playing out in the NFL, and it's pretty clear that the Lions are probably the biggest face character, right? They're like, everyone loves them because they're the big underdog, and that, not only that, but in part that makes the 49ers a heel team in the broad like media sense. It's very clear that they are sort of regarded as the like more bad guys in the NFC, also in part because they've been to, like, in every other NFC championship game, they're always there, and people are to a degree sick of seeing them as well. And then, of course, the media doesn't like to see a quarterback they didn't have high expectations for defy their expectations and succeed. So that is one thing. And in the AFC, I'm a lot less sure about it. I think the NFL likes the Ravens as a face team, like a, likable team, which to me is pretty difficult, but they're also not like necessarily a hateable team. The Chiefs, to a degree, started as a very likable team, and now through, a lot of things are transitioning more into a dislikable team, but I don't know if the NFL wants to see it that way. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about this theory? Are they setting up like a feel-good Super Bowl? Maybe that would be it. The Ravens and Lions are the two likable teams that haven't gotten anywhere close to it yet, and now they can both at the same time sort of have the big achievement of being in the Super Bowl. Or how are you looking at it?
Well, in wrestling, you do need a face and a heel, right, to make the good matches. Every now and then you get the face versus the face or the heel versus the heel, but that doesn't really sell like the face versus the heel. People want to get behind one wrestler, or one team in this situation. The Chiefs are definitely a monster heel. A monster heel is that guy that nobody can stop. He always wins. He destroys his opponents. Doesn't even have to cheat because he's just so big and bad that he can just run
Brock
right
Lesnar.
over the opponents. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the Lions, trying to think of a good one to compare the Lions to. I don't know, maybe Seth Rollins or something, One of the little guys.
Even more good than Seth Rollins, because Seth Rollins was a heel at a time. I think the Lions are very hard.
Rey Mysterio, maybe that's a good one.
Yeah.
Little guy, the underdog that fights from underneath all the time. That's the Lions here, They're on a good run.
My best comparison to the Lions, and this is like a big throwback call, is like pre-2017 Sami Zayn in WWE. If you remember that at all.
Yeah, that is a really good one, Sami Zayn. Yeah, smaller guy.
He was the ultimate good guy. Had this thing with Kevin Owens the whole time. Yeah.
Canadian. I think he's originally Muslim descent or whatever it is, but yeah. There's another thing I was thinking of though. If they wanted to, let's say this is a conspiracy, right? And they want a certain thing, but they could squash the belief in the conspiracy theories by having a matchup with the Lions and the Chiefs, because that would put an end to it. Like everybody had this
the colors, right?
Yeah, that would put an end to that, and everybody's like, well, you know what? It's not scripted. When all along they actually scripted that to happen, and they still get Taylor Swift and they still get Eminem in the Super Bowl and do the biggest numbers of all time while squashing the conspiracy theory.
And they get probably the clearest heel face matchup.
Yes,
I would
absolutely.
say.
Yeah.
Like there's two. If we really want heel face, you either get Chiefs Lions or you get Niners Ravens. Mm-hmm. Those are, because the Niners will automatically become huge heels if they beat the Lions, just because they beat the Lions. Mm-hmm. And if the Chiefs are big heels, the Ravens will become even more of a face team when they beat the Chiefs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I don't know about my picks anymore. Now that we've discussed all of this, I'm not so sure.
Ravens and Niners works if you want heel face, and it works with the colors. It kind of fulfills all the conspiracies.
Yeah. But that's the thing, though, is now I'm thinking like, okay, this could be a double cross here. This might just be the Lions and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl just to end all that.
It could be, yeah. But we're disregarding the idea that both the games have to be, if it were that way, have to be rigged and managed in such a way that it happens. And I think if like pure speculation, right? Like I'm not saying that anything is true, but if it were like that, let's say we're in the NFL boardroom and we have to okay, it has to be like a heel face thing and a big story to tell. Do you let the AFC play out however it happens because it's the first game, and then you mess with the other game? Like let's say the Ravens beat the Chiefs. Okay, now we have to make sure the Niners win, or the Chiefs win. Okay, now we have to try to get the Lions to win.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I do. I think so. I think you would have to play it out like that. Like, okay, just let that game go. Less chance of anyone getting caught in this conspiracy if you don't interfere with that game, and then you get to the referees for the other game. Yeah, and then whichever opponent you want to face who already won. So yeah, exactly. That's what I would do. You still do have to make it right, and I guess there's no bad outcome, right, in the NFC title game. No,
The Niners have a good storyline with both teams, and the Lions are a good story if they win, no matter what.
Well, and you still have the underdog story with the 49ers. You have Brock Purdy, the Purdy
Tom
Brady. Yeah,
but he's not. The thing is, he's not painted as a likable underdog. That's the thing. Like, they're painting him like a heel. The media does for some reason, right? Like,
It does feel like that.
Like, he's getting credit that he doesn't deserve, which is the opposite of the case. He gets criticism that he doesn't deserve.
Well, it felt like halfway through the season, I was like, okay, people are starting to get behind this guy, right? And then there was those 3 dud games, and everybody's like, I told you he wasn't no good. Like, he's just not gonna. Yeah, he's not gonna be Tom Brady. There's no way this guy will ever be Tom Brady. Then he starts winning again, and people are like, you know what? This guy is kind of good. And I feel like everybody wants to get behind an underdog, and that's why they're all behind the Lions right now, because there's an entire team of underdogs at this point. But Brock Purdy still has that, and if he wins the Super Bowl, I think it'll change a lot of people's mind. I have seen where they're kind of turning on Brock Purdy because a game like last week happens, and they're like, okay, well, he's not really that good, and the guy's the last.
Arguably his best performance so far. Just for that last drive, because he showed something he hadn't before. We know he can roll over like mediocre teams. Yeah, he can blow people out. He's good. He's like a very much above average top 10, maybe top 5 quarterback. We know that. Mm-hmm. Can he come back adverse circumstances against a good team in the pouring rain from behind when his team is not playing well and his play calling isn't very good?
That's what always confused me about Tom Brady, though. That exact same thing. Because Tom Brady would play horribly for the first half of so many games. And it was in the Super Bowl against the Falcons. Played horribly for an entire half. But everybody's like, after he wins that game, he makes that comeback drive. Like, oh, it's the greatest of all time. I mean, that's why it happened. He's so good. But he never played a complete game. I don't feel like Tom Brady played a complete game throughout the last 6-7 years of his career. It did not feel like that.
Rarely.
Yeah.
Ironically, the closest he got to a complete game was that Super Bowl against the Eagles, where the only back-breaking mistake he made was to fumble the ball late in the game. Before that, he had his best performance in all the Super Bowls he played in.
Tom Brady wasn't much of a receiver. We know that.
Yeah, yeah, that one too. Actually, he dropped that ball, but that was just okay. I would barely say that's his fault because that's really not what he does. It's the fumble, right? To give it away in the end and lose the game that way. That was the backbreaker, and that's what people remember most about the game, aside from the Philly special.
Yeah, the Philly special, and I almost feel like that's what triggered that play because didn't the Nick Foles touchdown happen before that?
I think they wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
hey, I can catch too.
Yeah, you're not gonna show me up. Watch this, and then he fumbled the ball.
Yeah. If he doesn't lead all quarterbacks in receiving, we can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good moment, though. I mean, I've never been a fan of the Eagles for sure, but that was a good moment.
That was. Like the whole world was behind Philly, right? Everyone loved them. They were the whole big underdog thing, and then with some success, winning a couple of championships and being in the Super Bowl a couple times, and just having a couple of good seasons, they turned into an unlikable team, which they are now. Yeah,
well, I mean, it started right after that win. The fans tearing up the city and shouting profanities through the streets all night long.
Jason Kelce during the parade.
Yes, your drunken speech and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And it turns people into obnoxious characters.
Yeah. And the same thing have happened with the Chiefs, They're super... Patrick Mahomes being drunk with the WWE belt. That kind of paints the picture right there. He was running around the streets with the WWE Championship belt right after the Super Bowl win. Yeah. Drunk, falling off the wagon, just slobbering and stumbling everywhere.
I think success makes you more of what you are. I think that really, really holds true. The Eagles, couple of good seasons, turns to crap. The Chiefs, couple of good seasons, unlikable. Mm-hmm. Which is why I'm even more proud of the Niners. Even though a lot of people will say the Niners are unlikable, of course, from my perspective, that's not the case. To me, even though they've been very good with Kyle Shanahan for a few years now, I still think they have a sort of a likability to them.
But
maybe I'm very biased, though.
As much as you think the media has turned against Brock Purdy, there's still a likability with the 49ers. I don't think anyone's going to just hate it like if the Patriots or the Chiefs won another Super Bowl. They're not going to just completely turn on him. They're going to give him his flowers to a certain extent. He probably needs to get to about 3 maybe like Tom Brady did before everybody starts saying, yeah.
If he does it for another 10 years, like the next 10 years, you have the Niners in the championship every year or damn near every year, people will get sick of that too, eventually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Tom Brady was the underdog also. He was
at the start.
pick.
Yeah. A lot of teams in the NFC are sick of it, for sure. I know the Cowboys, Eagles, Packers don't want to see another Niners game in the NFC Championship.
No, obviously not. Yeah, Seahawks are sick of it.
The Seahawks, Rams. Most of the NFC is, if we're being fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it must feel good though that your team can make it that far.
Oh yeah, of course, not complaining, and it looks like we'll be able to for the next 15 years because Purdy's the real deal. That's the consistency you get. You know, you got you're supposed to have a great defensive line, underperformed, but you got the quarterback, and he can get you there, and you have every reason to believe he'll get there next year, and the year after, and the year after that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good deal. Yeah.
Oh, as long as you got Shanahan, you're in good shape.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, he can be there. I mean, Shanahan can coach for 30 years. Mm-hmm. I see no reason why he would not be the Niners coach in 2050.
Another storyline for the 49ers versus the Chiefs. Like it happened, you know, what was that? That was 2019 season. It happened in 2020. Yeah, he was the new guy versus the old guard.
Yeah, so Andy Reid definitely needed his success because Andy Reid's retirement is just a few years, right? We're not looking at like 20 years anymore.
No, not at all.
He's been around for long enough, so he'll retire at some point. But you got the Niners at the time with probably the youngest GM, youngest head coach, the youngest owner in the league. I mean, young as everything, right? And that might still be the case for a lot of it.
Yeah.
So that group will stay together for a long time. Now you got a young quarterback. That's great. Good things.
It's weird. Hasn't Sean McVay already talked about retirement at some point? Wasn't it like after that bad season last year? Was it?
Yeah, he did, but I don't know. I don't know why, but honestly, he's never struck me as much of a football guy than Shanahan did anyway.
Yeah, I don't think he's the nerd.
He's not the nerd. No. He's not the nerd. Like McDaniel's the nerd from that coaching staff. And Shanahan
absolutely.
I don't think for the next 20 years, Kyle Shanahan would think about doing anything but coach. Same for McDaniel. I think those are the kind of guys that just do it forever. That's what they do, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they're all three. Even Zach Taylor, you know, they're all three heralded as the virtuosos of coaching, you know, due to their age and success already.
Exactly. So can't complain. I wouldn't mind Andy Reid retiring. So
only one of them have a Super Bowl win so far, though.
Oh yeah, but they'll be around for a long time.
Yeah.
I think Mike McDaniel is gonna do better, you know, in the future. I mean, he made the playoffs. Dolphins tanked late in the season. A lot of injuries. Pass rush was completely destroyed. They'll be back and they'll win playoff games. So they're going to get their success.
Yeah. Is that the new, like, Belichick coaching tree? I know everybody's tried to get their hands on. Well, originally, I mean, because Sean McVay took over the Rams, was it the same year or before?
Same
Shanahan?
year.
Yeah. And after that success, you know, when they went to play the Patriots in the Super Bowl, everybody wanted a Sean McVay.
Everyone.
It wasn't called the Shanahan tree then. Now it's called the Shanahan tree. Then it was called the McVay tree.
Oh, because technically McVay is part of the Shanahan tree. Shanahan always had a superior role to Sean McVay beforehand.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's why. But both of them, as head coaches, have produced a bunch of coordinators as well. You know, Joe Brady, Mike McDaniel, Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, Raheem Morris, all of those guys that were head coaches.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get Raheem Morris in Atlanta. Hold on,
we
had Raheem. We had him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the defensive coordinator. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you want with him?
I don't know. I just want somebody from Shanahan's.
You can get Belichick or Jim Harbaugh, and you want Raheem Morris.
Yeah, now that I think about it, that defense was horrible when Raheem Morris was here. And he actually took over for Dan Quinn as the interim for a little while. It didn't go so well. Nah, I'll take that back. I don't want Raheem Morris.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Wish we would have got
bigger fish. D'Amico Ryans, D'Amico Ryans is one of my favorite coaches in the league. I love that guy. I loved him as not as a player. I didn't really get to see much of him as a player, but as a coordinator, big energy. He was great. Wish he would stick around as a defensive coordinator, but definitely deserves to be a head coach, and he's done a great job. Should be coach of the year, in my opinion. Kevin Stefanski is the favorite right now, it should be D'Amico Ryans. I would vote for D'Amico Ryans as coach of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one season with an extremely young team. Yeah, were they last place in their division last year? Yeah, I mean, he's a shoo-in, in my opinion. You were talking about the odds, the odds for coach of the year and whatnot. I would think he has to be the front runner.
Kevin Stefanski, last time I checked.
Oh,
by quite a bit, actually. I guess it's the whole, 4 quarterbacks and still made the playoffs situation. Brought Joe Flacco off the couch, won games.
Yeah.
So that's where they're going. We'll talk about the odds next week, and then we'll see, we'll get a proper review, because that's when they're set before the NFL honors, but I think Stefanski's the favorite.
Yeah, I would vote for Ryans myself.
Also, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, so to recap our picks, we both have the Niners. We disagree on the AFC. You have the Ravens, I have the Chiefs. So you're going color conspiracy, which is a strong theory I have to give you, man. How consistent it's been, and they're both the 1 seeds. Of course, it's the most likely scenario.
Yeah,
but
the number 1 and number 2 overall.
I'm going Chiefs, because the Chiefs dynasty, I think we can safely call it the Chiefs dynasty. They've been in the championship for the past 6 years, every single year. I think it's fair to call it a dynasty after this long of a time of success. Is not currently set to last very much longer, with pieces like Andy Reid, maybe even Steve Spagnuolo and Travis Kelce probably being not too far removed from retirement. And I don't have a doubt that Mahomes is going to be good and successful for another 10 years if he so chooses. But a lot of the pieces there are going to be heading off into the sunset sooner or later. So they have to make the most of what time they do have left, and making it to another Super Bowl will definitely add to that resume and just ensure everyone's Hall of Fame spots in the future and all those sort of things. So they've had a pretty good grip on the AFC. I'm saying they win another one. I'll give them one more, at least this year.
I feel like the cupboard is getting pretty bare on that offense already. After the season we saw, they haven't produced any new superstars. They don't have a Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey's on his last leg.
Rashee Rice is a breakout player. He's great. True. So that they definitely hit on him. But they have shifted more and more over the years to relying on defense. That's for sure. Chiefs defense now is a better unit than their offense.
Yeah, and I think I made this point last week or whatever, that I don't think defense wins championships anymore. So you still have to, a good defense absolutely helps, but you still have to have an explosive offense, and they are just not as explosive as they used to be.
If defense wins championships, whatever AFC team definitely wins everything, because both the Ravens and Chiefs have by far the best defenses left. Who wins if it's not defense, then? Because all 4 of these offenses are pretty darn good.
Yeah, they really are. Man, if I take out last week's game, I gotta say the 49ers probably. No, actually, yeah, I gotta say overall, I mean, the stars are on the 49ers. Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey. That's where the stars are. That's the super team right now.
The stars are there. My concern is just if we look at the foundation, it is probably the weakest for the Niners out of all teams. And by foundation, I mean the offensive and defensive lines.
True. Yeah, not as good in the trenches, even though still a lot of big names on those lines. And you talked about Hargrave and several other guys earlier.
But how many 49ers offensive linemen can you name? Starting O linemen. My bet is one. My bet is one.
I would actually have to refresh. I'm thinking. I know all the names. I would just have to refresh my.
But outside of Trent Williams, how many do people actually know? How many noteworthy players are there? Because it's a below average line, right?
Yeah.
So
man, you got me there, because I would actually have to look up the list. If I look at the list, I'm gonna be like, okay, yeah, I know that guy, but nothing comes to mind directly right offhand.
But then if you think Lions, Vita Vea, Frank Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, those are all household names. Think about the Ravens, Tyler Linderbaum, Ronnie Stanley, all household names. Every one of them. Pro Bowlers up and down the line.
Absolutely.
That's potentially a big deal.
Yeah.
Niners are the weakest team in terms of trench play this season.
Hard
Both
to believe,
O and D line. Yep.
Because that's kind of been the core of their strategy.
It has been, right? It used to be a top defense, like top 3 defense, sort of leading the way for a fringe top 10 offense. And now it's a top 3 offense leading the way for a maybe top 10 defense.
Yeah, I mean, I can't debate you on that one. I think you're right. But
We'll see how it turns out.
Kind of hard to run a good power run scheme without a good O-line.
I mean, they've always been better at run blocking than pass blocking. That's for sure. My biggest concern is the line, both sides. Defensive line especially. We've got a lot of good quarterbacks left.
I made the argument earlier in the season that, well, actually, it wasn't that much earlier. It was when you guys played the Ravens, that if you guys are going to face twice in the season, which it would have to be in the Super Bowl to face them again, I would rather have lost that first game. But you make a really good argument as to why the Ravens could win twice if that happens.
Oh, they should be hugely favored. Like, you have to look at the reason you lose, right? And a lot of people look at, 4 interceptions is the reason. Well, 3 of those were like complete flukes, like just utter chaos, right? So 3 of those might as well not happen at all. But the reason they lost, fundamentally from snap 1 to the very final one, is because they were getting hit in the mouth by the Ravens' offensive line, and they couldn't protect Purdy, and they could not stop the Ravens' run game and Lamar scrambling, and they couldn't even get to Lamar in the pocket. That was the issue, and that's something that's, to me, I think a lot less fixable over the course of several weeks. That's something that you fix in an off season with free agents and in the draft. That's not a scheme thing, right? If you have like an interior 3 offensive linemen like the Ravens have, there's nothing you can do because they'll beat you up today. They'll beat you up next month because it's the same people that are there. So that's the issue. It's not a problem that you address during a season. If it was a game plan issue, then maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not what I saw.
And I'm debating if that does happen, if it's the 49ers and Ravens. Who am I going with? Do I want to go with my theory that it's really hard to beat a team twice in the same season? Because it really is. And I think Shanahan will have a better plan this time. He's not going to go in there with the exact same game plan as last time, seeing what happened. Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. You never know how the game goes. If the bounces don't come, of course, it might be closer, but the foundation.
I think if that happens, it will absolutely be closer. And I still will stick with it that the 49ers are going to win if that happens. If it's the Ravens. Nobody's going to bet on, I'm sure some people will bet on the 49ers. I'm
betting on the Ravens if the Niners and Ravens play. I will bet on the Ravens.
I'll take the 49ers. I'll take my chances on that. Just the way I've seen these trends play out in the past.
Because it's going to be a close spread. It'll be like 2 points, maybe 2 or 3 points.
You don't think they'll give the Ravens more than that?
I don't think so. Because it's one seed. Maybe, but I don't really think they'll have a big spread if it is a Super Bowl.
I mean, it's not going to be huge. It's on a neutral field.
A lot more than 4.
Yeah. So technically, it's closer to the 49ers. It's a lot closer to the 49ers. They're playing in Vegas this year, right? Yeah. A lot closer for 49ers. So, not that matters in the Super Bowl. If you're going to go to the Super Bowl, you can go from anywhere in the world because you have the money to go to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. You're paying $5,000 for a ticket. You can probably afford to travel.
Yeah, true. And then there's going to be the contingent of fans from other teams that just want to go to a Super Bowl.
True, yeah. Like the Super Bowl is the least biased in terms of fans usually, because half the stadium is full of like celebrities anyway, who are like fair weather fans, which is, you could consider a problem in its own right, but at least it usually does not give an advantage to either team. It really is a neutral ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. Can we agree on this though? I know that it's your team, but put your fandom aside. We'd all be happy if the Lions make the Super Bowl.
I can't disagree with it. I guess it's if I got to pick any team in the entire NFC where I'd say I would most be okay with the Niners not winning a championship in favor of that team, it would be the Lions. Of course, I still would rather Niners win the championship this weekend.
Of course.
But if it has to be a team they lose to, then the Lions probably deserve it the most. Because they've already had their best season in franchise history, at least in the Super Bowl era. And if they win the championship, that's definitively the best they've ever been in all of history. And I'd be happy for them. I would be, though. Of course, if there's a title to be had, I would rather my team win it than anyone else, right?
Yeah. So let's say the Lions win this. Who would you rather see them face?
I'd rather see the Lions face
The Monster Hills?
That's a very difficult question. See, the thing is, to me, the difference between Chiefs and Ravens as heels is not as big as it is to the general public. I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the Ravens, and that's less through their own fault as it is for the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs are just turning to be unlikable because of their own actions, and the Ravens just because of, like, buzz and how they're hyped up and how, like, just people, like, falsely praise them, in my opinion, a lot. Not necessarily all the bad characters. And I come from a place of liking the Chiefs and sympathizing with the Chiefs originally, right? Mm-hmm. And that's only like slowly going down. So I'd probably pick whichever team is the Lions are more likely to win. And for that, I'll be prophetic a little bit and ask you, do you remember what the very first game this entire season was?
Oh, what was it? It involved. It involved
a warm Thursday night in Kansas City where the defending Super Bowl champions lost to the Detroit Lions in the season opener.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to beat a team twice in a season.
But I would take that because that would be the first and last matchup in the season, which I don't remember ever happening.
God, I don't want that to happen. I really don't, because I feel like the Chiefs are just gonna. Yeah, I mean, they lost to him. They lost to him in the first game of the first week of the season, but no, it doesn't work that way. It like they're not gonna come back and they're not gonna beat them twice. Like, I don't know. I think that's just a setup for the big Monster Hill to finally stomp him out because he got one over on him earlier. Yeah.
Maybe it's just a revenge game and they even it out. It could be, but imagine beating them twice in 1 year during your best season as a team ever.
Oh, that would be awesome. It'd be awesome to see.
Yeah,
and you want to say, based on the entire season, that the Chiefs are going to be a lot easier to beat than the Ravens, right?
Yes,
but
for sure.
But it's the Chiefs. It's just the Chiefs, like.
Only reason that might not happen is because Patrick Mahomes has a higher top gear than Lamar. But top to bottom, the Ravens are by far the best defensive and one of the best offensive rosters, and probably the best overall roster in the league, close there, at least nominally, with the Niners, but the Niners haven't lived up to it in recent weeks.
Like Tom Brady in 2020. We thought there's no way he's taking the Bucs to the Super Bowl, right? No, he wins the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes.
That's a great team. I mean, that was a top defense as well. That was an insane team.
But they had
added Gronk, and I think Julio was even on it.
Yeah, I think he was, actually.
Mike Evans could go. That was a super team.
They had 6 losses that season, though. So everybody thought, at least halfway through the season, like, there's no chance. Like, this is great, Now the Patriots and the Bucs suck. At least that's what I was thinking. But yeah,
I'd go with the Chiefs because I think the Lions have a better matchup against them than the Ravens, as it does almost every team. Because the Chiefs' offensive line is not as stout as the Ravens, and the Lions have a very good developing pass rush. Aiden Hutchinson's a monster. I think it would give them more of a chance to make a game-breaking play or two on defense than it would against Baltimore. So I would take the Chiefs and the Lions. If it had to be, I guess I would take the Chiefs either way, huh? I guess I'm rooting for the Chiefs, because if the Niners play, I'd rather they play the Chiefs. The Lions play, I'd rather they play the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I guess that's the way
Anybody would. You know what? If the Lions win, I would rather see the Ravens blow out the Chiefs, so they look like the unstoppable hill. Like, and I've never had anything against the Ravens.
See,
Like,
if the Chiefs are the heel, you blow out the heel, you become more of a face, right?
In a sense, but they're facing the baby faces in the next round, so people are gonna be like, oh, okay, so this unstoppable team, this is David and Goliath at that.
I don't know. Right? I think it'll be a feel-good Super Bowl for, like, at least the media will spin it that way. Oh, the deserving Ravens and the deserving Lions.
Yeah, they'll try, but I think the fans are, the fans that are getting behind the Lions, they're like, this is an overcomable obstacle, unovercomable.
Maybe. Yeah. If
you know what I was trying to say.
Run through the AFC like that, yeah. Then maybe.
Unovercomable. That's what I was trying to say. Okay. Like, because if they blow out the Chiefs, then they're definitely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the best team in the entire NFL, right?
Oh yeah, by far.
Yeah, especially if they do what they did to the Texans, just stomp them out. Like, no chance of the Chiefs winning.
But then, if the Lions beat the Niners at San Francisco, who can make the argument that the Lions are any kind of, like, underdog team either?
Well, you got to look at the Ravens, what they did to the 49ers, and if it's a very close, just scratch and claw, and you finally pull it out, last-minute field goal, whatever it is, they finally pull it out over the 49ers.
Maybe.
And
could be.
Then, they go into the Super Bowl like 12-point underdogs or something.
Yeah, the Lions would be probably a full touchdown at least.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they are today, this week against the Niners.
And then you get like one of those Rocky Balboa moments where he's facing Apollo Creed or Clubber Lang or what was the Dolph Lundgren's character, whatever his name was, the big Russian guy.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, Ivan something maybe.
Yeah, Dragos. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Dragos. Right. Yeah.
So you have the big just slugfest where the underdog is just taking it to this giant.
I'd like to see it. Yeah. And there's no bad matchup. If the Lions are in it, it'll be amazing either way.
Yeah. I think that would be a good storyline, though.
That's true.
My fan fiction over here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of storylines we could spin for this, and next week we'll know. We will have 2 teams crowned as champions this weekend, and we will be able to give them their credit next week. But for now, do we have anything to add to these games?
No, I think that's it for this week.
Then I'd like to turn it over to our audience. Let us know in the comments who you have winning. What are your conspiratorial inclinations? If the NFL had their hands in this whole thing, where do you go? Do you support the color, the logo color conspiracy, or do you go like Chiefs Lions revenge tour kind of thing? David versus Goliath with the Ravens and Lions. What are we picking? What do you think? Who's going to win? Or just in general, who's the better team and who probably will win the game? Let us know your picks, and we will be back next week with the review of the championship and the picks for NFL honors. That's a big event coming up the weekend after, during Pro Bowl weekend. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Deuces.
Check the scoreboard. Check.